Hi Sachin,
Hey, good morning, Dinkar.
how are you?
I'm doing fine. How about you?
I'm doing good. So Sachin, incidentally, I was few days yesterday. I was Saturday. I was on a plane and I had ordered some food. So they wanted to confirm I'm the right person. So can you tell me your full name? I stated my full name, and the person sitting in front of me turned back and said, "Dinkar Charak ThoughtWorks." I said yes. He said, I've been listening to your podcast, you and Sachin's.
Okay.
that was that was like interesting. Yeah, not
So that was like 75 divided by 1.4 billion chance that you could cross.
yeah.
That was a rare
Not,
occasion.
yeah, I'm not going to cross check your probability here, but I'll go with that. It was an insane probability, so that was good.
Yeah.
And one of the things I was thinking of, as I talked to that person, I was thinking is that we talk a lot about the engineering excellence side of things. That comes naturally to us. And we have talked about what kind of metrics to use. We have those thoughts and opinions, right? But we have said that they should be in juxtaposition to business outcome. They should uh, correlate to that. If you are unable to find a direct causation, at least see if there's a correlation, establish it.
Correct.
And then I thought that probably we have not spent time enough on talking about how to discover business outcomes. Because I think the assumption, a lot of, at least in the beginning of my career and a lot of technology teams that I work with, the assumption is that business knows what they are doing. Usually, what they that's true. Business has their own way of measuring outcomes, which usually they do, and we'll do our thing here, and they'll do their things there, and things will work out. And I don't get all this the ratios and financial ratios and this business metric, and that's why I became an engineer. So I don't want to do that now. But I think it's very important for tech teams to understand business outcomes, and also actually where tech has become core of the business also has to think of new ways of approaching how to come up with business outcome metrics.
Correct.
And I know that you and I have worked with various enterprises. We have been in a lot of situations where we have helped people do that. So what I wanted to do is um, walk through our top four. I don't want to say top four. I think these four approaches kind of culminate the various scenarios we have seen. We'll walk through all of them, and we'll discuss that how we have enabled the tech team, the product team, and the business team to come together, use these approaches to decide what kind of business outcome metrics to look for.
Yeah.
So that's what I wanted to do today. Anything else you wanted to add before we dive into this?
No, this is a big enough topic. If we could cover in 30 minutes, at least the introduction of it, and then probably we can go deeper. But this is pretty good.
Good. So I'll quickly share my screen. You can see this, right?
Yeah.
The first one.
I had one question around this
Sure.
is if you think about, I mean, we have this slide. If you, what you just flashed these 4 points, we have talked to at least 50 people about this, and these are customers.
Yeah.
And what we realize is that this framework fits them only when we show them. So if you can just walk us through, like, what are these areas in which they operate? And then we can talk also about why it is so difficult for people to come up in the first place with these things. It will be good.
Sure. Hey, I don't know the answer of why it is difficult for people to, but and it's a fact that when we show this to people, they get it.
Correct.
Right? And this kind of goes back to the basic product management philosophy that a lot of designers use, a lot of product managers use, that people don't always know what they want, but it's very easy for them to say what they don't want, right? So for someone to kind of know, hey, this is my approach, it's very hard. And that's why so many frameworks and so many methodologies exist, right? But they can look at all four that we're going to introduce, and instinctively they will know in their organization what will fit best.
Correct.
Now, why of that? Honestly, I don't think I know, or I don't know if someone really knows. But that's a good observation, right? It fits them once we show it to them,
Correct.
right? So let's go with that for now. And I'm hoping that when we show this in this video, it will it will make sense to someone, right? So the first approach we're talking about is key business outcomes based approach, right? Now, this evolved, Sachin, based on what I did was I collected a lot of business outcomes that people have talked about in various enterprises, kind of made a list of it and saw if any kind of logical grouping exists. And what I noticed was that most of the outcome metrics revolved around improvement of efficiency and effectiveness, right? So these are the kind of metrics that tell you that we have a business process A, and after we run this transformation program, we build this web app, we build this internal tool, we get in this product into the place. Instead of 15 steps, it will become 5 steps. So they're talking about efficiency aspect of it. Many times people will say that, we go through the steps, but it doesn't really have the effect. People don't really get it. So they want to change certain things. So people understand what they're doing. They understand the importance of it. And they make, not just robotic decisions, but value-based decisions. And that's where they want to make redo the whole thing and make it a little more effective, right? And bulk of the metrics kind of lie there.
Yes.
The second thing that I started noting, it's true for consumer products, true for smaller enterprises, though not that true for large enterprise. It's my favorite gripe, right? If you look at enterprise, the kind of interface they would develop for their customers versus what they would develop for their employees. Employees I'll always get the worst of experience for some reason, I don't know why, in the internal software and everything. But anyway, that aside, there are a lot of metrics that help track the improvement in experience. These are a little more emotional, qualitative things like NPS score. Hey, did you feel, those kind of things. Now, and this is where a few more lie. Very few lie in measuring the increase of influence. Now, increase in influence, I feel the most common one is App Store star rating, right? Many people object to that as a outcome metric because they say it's a vanity metric. You can run a program, you can ask a user to give feedback when something good happens, so they will give. There's more chance of them giving a positive feedback, or someone goes and takes the pain of giving a star rating and a feedback where something is wrong. So, your App Store ratings will always skew towards bad experience. And then people do these kind of balancing acts that ask a user when they had a very good experience, hey, do you want to go and give us a rating now that you had a good experience? And many times people run some kind of campaigns also. To be honest, I have seen people do that. That seems to be a very popular approach. But if you look at it, it's a way of increasing your influence in the market, right? It's a metric that tells you what's your influence out there. And for B2B, it becomes even more complicated. A lot of people look at market penetration as these kind of things, right? But there are very few here, and we can discuss when we do the double click some recommendations and approach to take. The fourth one is the trickiest one, and this I've seen very happen in very few places. Now, what happens today, in my opinion, is that there's this whole thought process of let's collect data. There's a little bit of data gluttony there. Let's collect data. Let the product collect that data. Then we'll put it into some warehouse. Then we'll get some BI tool, and then someone will get some data analyst, and they will look at the data and they will do slicing, dicing. They'll come up with some magic insight, and bingo, and we will make millions, right? That reminds me on slash dot. I don't know, Sachin, if you still have, people had this algorithm, do this question mark, and now you're successful. And every time what that third step question mark is the big, but here also, right? But what we are saying is rather than make it a post facto, ex post facto thing, be a little more deliberate about it. Try to figure out what is it you want to know about what the market trends can tell you. How do you read those market trends? Be a little more deliberate. What is it you want to look for? And try to bring them early and try to track them as an outcome much earlier. So these are the four business outcomes categories where a lot of metrics fall. And this is one approach where we go and tell someone that, okay, let me help you get a coverage. I know instinctively you're focused a lot about one. You rarely think of four because you think that later when we have a data, we can do slicing, dicing. But let's have a conversation and figure out that in each one of them, what are one or two metric. I mean, at some point, probably we should also discuss about metrics gluttony, right? Measure everything. There's a cost to measuring everything. There's a cost to attention. There's a cost to tracking something, and there's a cost to remediating if something is not going right. So that's the first approach. Look at these four categories, come up with one or two key metrics that will help you measure this, and that becomes an way for you to measure business outcome of a product. This approach works well in organizations where the IT, the engineering, and business are working very close to each other. And there are very open lines of communications between the two. There's more interaction. Sachin, talk to us about this approach.
Sure. So Dinkar, in terms of like the framework which you mentioned of the four pillar, this is more so from the engineering team's perspective. And what I have seen is in organizations, when you want to communicate what your engineering teams are achieving and delivering value, these are the three pillars comes to my mind. And how do you see this is, first of all, there are many stakeholders in an organization. Sometimes these are people who fund your program. Sometimes these are people who consume your software. And whenever we talk about consumers, these are not end users, typically like social network. We are the consumers of it. I'm talking about sometimes stakeholders and consumers who are within the organization as well. Example is a bank. Traders are consumers of software developed by the IT systems, IT teams within the bank. And when they are doing it, you need to figure out that the value is communicated in different channels. So the four pillars you mentioned earlier about are you increasing the effectiveness and efficiencies? Are you actually trying to figure out future trends, increase user experience or influence? All those things you can communicate through these three pillars. So let's talk about each pillar one by one. The first pillar, which in my mind is about building the right things. This is about focusing on delivering features which matters to your end consumers. there should not be any wastage. Any feature which people are not using or they are not getting value out of it is a wastage which we have created within the system itself. It is practically product tech debt or product debt, if you will. When you think about monitoring success of a product, we need to identify, first of all, metrics, the right metrics, and then inject them within the your measurement framework. And you don't need 20 measurements. In our experience, which we have spoken to customers, you need only few per stream. So if you have 10 teams working on different parts of an application, you don't need 100 metrics, you need few. Each stream can actually have only few. And when you build these metrics, essentially anytime for one feature, you complete one path for features, you can actually start tracking whether this is delivering any value for my customer or not with a purpose. So is the hypothesis being successful or not? Now, the second pillar is all about delivering the features on the left, but delivering it with the right implementation. It is all about engineering aspects of building product. And although I use the word product here, think about product as only a unit of software which is going to users. Everything what we build is a product. It can be platform. I mean, we use product very loosely within organizations or use product when it comes to in a package. But to me, anything is a product which goes as a unit of software to customers. So whenever you are delivering it, make sure that you are building it in the right way. And are you building it for scale? Are you building it for high maintainability? Are you carrying so much technical debt? Is it well tested? Is it having least amount of bugs? Is your deployment strategy well thought out? And all these things, when you do it, these are super critical, not only for actually engineering teams, because to also support the things on the left, which is building the right things. What if customers are asking tomorrow a feature which needs to be delivered rapidly to respond to a market condition? If your engineering stack is not well defined, it is not well implemented, your team is not disciplined, you will have so much struggle to respond to customer request in an agile manner. And here, agile I'm using truly to respond quick enough, not in terms of like the agile, which is again overused term in the industry. Now, the third pillar in my mind is all about managing the things well. Software, when you build it, it is just 10% of its life cycle. Some of the softwares which we have seen, Dinkar, are running for 20 years in the industry. And when they are running for 20 years, literally for last 5 years, everybody's scared to even touch the software. And they are worried about ensuring that nothing breaks it in this. Otherwise, somebody's job will get lost. So what we are talking about is managing the things well. Is your DevOps strategy correct? Are you deploying it well? Are you evolving the software along with the time? There are no, I mean, everybody knows about the Log4j fiasco, right? There was one vulnerability, and I don't know, Dinkar, whether industry paid a few $100 billion in terms of just effort, collective effort of testing, building, releasing, managing, all that stuff for that one Log4j. Talk about free software, right? So
hey, nothing against free software.
Absolutely. No. It's all well. The point is that you need to manage all these things well. Any software you build has to be managed well, and you need to also measure that you are doing it correctly.
Exactly.
And this can be done through, again, your metrics of mean time to restore. The 4 key metrics has a pretty robust measurement framework for that. And you need to have very solid discipline to manage your technical debt and evolve your software stack with time. So these are the 3 pillars, Dinkar, comes to my mind.
What I feel is that this approach works very well where these are 2 distinct organizations. There's an IT organization which is under pressure to talk about the ROI of investment in ways of doing excellence, why excellence matters. So they have their own metrics. There's a product organization which is calling out the value of building the right product. And there are governance and observability and production support and compliance and all that. We're talking about various. So I think where you have distinct departments who are siloed in some way, sometimes for needed reasons, maybe in banking and financial institutions where they do want to keep them separate. These kind of metrics work out very well.
That's an excellent call out, Dinkar. I mean, in terms of like these three siloed, and we have seen many of our customers have these three silo organizations.
Yes.
And what I have seen as a downside of that is basically when the middle part, which is engineering, believe you talk to them, they say either it is problem of the left pillar or the right pillar, that the overall product is not successful. And this is result of multiple things, obviously organizational design and whatnot. But if you have these kind of like proper, robust measurement framework in place,
exactly,
then rather than subjective and prejudiced conversation, you can have very evidence-based interventions,
exactly,
saying that this is what I want to do. And obviously, at some point of time in future, we should also talk about what measurements we can suggest for some of the things by using a case study or something like that. But let's continue with the flow for stakeholders, Dinkar. That will clarify a lot of things.
Sure. So you did mention, right, in organization, there are different kind of stakeholders. And the third approach that we have found to be very useful is especially in an organization which are a little hierarchical, where the execs are highly involved, and these tend to be either very traditional large enterprises or and even a modern enterprise which is kickstarting a transformation. So there's a big investment, and various leaderships are very keen in looking at how the transformation is going and having some kind of metrics around its success. So what this approach does is basically it says, hey, forget teams, forget outcomes. Let's take the approach that the execs know best, and they have figured out the things in their mind. And all we need to do is get a list of their expectations and figure out what's the right metric to measure that. And if we meet expectations of this whole variety of stakeholders, we would have effectively arrived at the key business outcome. And if you look at it, the things that we often see is there tends to be an exec sponsor, a CEO or someone, right, who essentially signs the check, who essentially takes money out of the margins, out of profits and everything and say, okay, let's go and do it. And there's, maybe sometimes it's the same as a chief business officer, maybe it's someone else, but business officers are the people who are responsible for the, revenue coming in, the expenses going out in some way to hold the P&L. There are CTOs who are saying that we need to bring in this technology, we need to bring in this approach for us to be ready as a business, us to scale. Then there are people who are responsible for the product management, and they're saying that, hey, just because engineering wants to build something, maybe business doesn't want it, just because business has asked for it, can technology do it? And who's thinking about the customers, who's thinking about the users, how will they consume it? So they have all those kind of metrics going in their mind. And definitely, if you're building a product, that product is part of some business process, and that business process will have some business head who may have some numbers setting on their head that, hey, we are giving you 3 or 5 million to build this, and ultimate aim for you is to build your business using this product. So they're keeping track of that. There are people who are selling that business, they're selling that business product and saying that, okay, now we have this tech product. I want this tech product to facilitate my sales, enable my sales, or do whatever, needed to improve with my revenue. There's an engineering person who's saying that, we have a lot of engineers. They're really smart people. We need to keep them challenged, engaged, give them a visibility into where their work is going, the value their work is developing, is generating for the organization. So they're thinking of all that. And then there's the head of design and UX who's thinking, okay, customer experience, minimum number of clicks, ease of use across channels. There is the PMO head who is saying that, hey, I've been given this much budget, I have to deliver this much scope in this much time, and that's what I'm laser focused on. And if there are a lot of vendors, and if this implementation is done by a vendor, there's a procurement head who's saying that, hey, we paying you so much. Are we getting the right rates? Are you the right vendor? So if you look at it, right, all of these have variety of expectations from one program, which is building that product, right? And what effectively this approach does, it gives you a very very much used word, holistic, or much used phrase, 360-degree view, but it really tells you that what you're doing, how different people in the organization ecosystem, I call it a stack, because at some point, if you're a product and you're building something, right, it feels like, oh my God, I have these 15 layers of bosses who are every day coming and asking me what happened. And that's why I tend to use this. So this approach, as I mentioned, works very well in a very hierarchical organization, or an organization which has brought a lot of things together to kickstart a big transformation journey. And there are all these stakeholders are curiously watching, and with the intention of course, encouraging and helping out and unblocking all of this. So this is a third approach that we have seen work very well.
Precisely. This is very critical.
Yeah. So the next one, Sachin, I wanted you to introduce is this is research paper that we have been using. And do you want to talk a little more about this one?
Absolutely. So Dinkar, and this also very well segues from your last slide, is different people in organizations have different, basically they are looking for different markers. But in reality, if you think about the common thread from even CEO to the engineering team, the goals get translated at different level because of the measurement or the information resolution changes. But you are still contributing to that larger vision or goal of the organization. And this is sort of that. So I'll use some annotation, but the right way to look at this is go from bottom to top. And that's the hierarchy we are talking about. And it also resonates very well with the directionality of your org structure as well. Is when you are looking at these metrics.
Sorry to interrupt, one inside joke. Lately, we've been getting a lot of heat on directionality.
Yeah. So directionality of the metrics is one of the very critical things to understand. Yes. So what we believe is that you should think about observable metrics as think about it, right? Most of the times when expectations are laid out by these different stakeholders to the teams, you don't know what to measure. And by the way, this whole slide and this framework is very useful to figure out what we want to measure. How do we want to measure these things? And the research paper, which is actually in the footnote, it's worth a read. They talk about, according to their research, more than 90% of businesses today, which they researched, require some level of business case to be prepared for getting funding. And that means somebody is actually putting a deliberate effort in writing a page or two to explain why they need to receive this funding for the program which they want to run. But they fail to articulate the value, what they will give in an objective manner. And the authors actually take long effort in figuring it out, how to do it properly in a scientific manner. But what we can do here is, in a simplistic way, that I have just extracted the actionable part of it, and we are trying to use it with our customers as well as internally. And we are finding good amount of success with this framework. Is if you don't know what is the benefit of something, you can actually start with observable things. What do you mean by that? Between you and me, let's say you are sponsor, I am actually the engineering team leader. We should just discuss what will be the visual indication or observable indication of something is working well. And this is not scientific, but this is just you and me are agreeing to each other.
Right.
So one of the example would be is that we run a call center and you go and you just like have a town hall meeting with call center people every week. And you just ask them as a business leader is, hey, folks, how was last week? Was there any improvement because we released a couple of features to ease your pain? And now when you see this, people can say, hey, I see my people are just a little bit more happy since you gave them that one step was removed. It was very great.
Or the other way
Now,
around. Or the other way around. They hate
or
you.
they are not happy with this new system because it just increased their cognitive load or their effort or something like that. Now, if you receive this feedback, you know what you want to measure. And that is where you introduce some level of very basic measurement. And right now, you don't know what is good or bad. You just want to put up a measurement to see. Example to yours earlier comment is, if people are not happy, how did it impact them? So I would like to measure the average call duration of customer support. And if earlier it was 3 minutes for last 6 months, now it has gone up to 3 minutes and 15 seconds. That's a pretty big bump in my mind. And then what might have caused that, we should talk about it. Now, next thing comes is quantification. Is if I do this, whatever change I am proposing, how much benefit plus or minus I will actually see in this particular thing. I want to reduce the amount of time per call, or I want to actually increase the efficiency of people. And when you do that, you are just building gradually from observable to measurable to quantifiable. Now, all such measures don't need to lead to financial eventually. Sometimes it is okay to just leave it there. Example is, I'll go to something else. Is in one of our customers' case, they wanted to improve the search efficiency. But the search efficiency has like 2 hops before you can convert that into a financial benefit, like increased revenue or conversion rate or some sort of things. But for the first minute, we need to know that what is my convergence, what is my search relevance.
Search relevance.
And then when I do search relevance, the improvement resulted into something. People are searching more. People are actually feeling that they are clicking on the first result more often, and so on and so forth. But in case of call center example, you can pretty much link that to financial benefit very quickly, because a 15-second reduction into average call time can be quickly articulated into higher throughput of people. They can process more calls. Less number of people are required, plus each call also is charged by minute. So now in this case, you can quickly translate this kind of quantifiable measurement into a financial measurement. So just to recap, if you want to think about a call center type of thing, you can say observable benefit would be is how happy my people are or unhappy. To measurement, you can introduce a measurement to see what actually is the benefit which people receive, because of which they are either happy, or what like problem we caused which made them unhappy. Quantifiable, what kind of percentage improvement you can actually expect by making certain changes. And then financial, if you have ability to link that to a financial benefit, you can do that. And now on the right hand side, what you see are 3 columns. Based on these activities and these evidences, you can say, I want to do these new things. I don't want to do these things, and I want to do these things in an improved manner. And if you think about creating this table of 2 dimensions, you can practically create a business case out of this table once you run the exercise. And these 4 slides, what you mentioned, Dinkar, it should be fairly straightforward to understand the expectations, then start putting into this table, and you should be able to have very robust framework of measurements and no metrics gluttony, as you mentioned earlier.
Right. So, yes, one thing I do want to address in case someone is kind of wondering, because this has often come up, where do frameworks like OKR and all that come into the picture? And I do want to call out is OKR is there is an objective and there is a result, right? So where do these objectives come from? This is where this exercise comes in. What are your key objectives, right? Now, once you have got them, what technique you will use to measure them? What kind of results will you achieve? The exact metric, maybe you can use the OKR methodologies, whatever, right? But in order to figure out that what are on the left-hand side, right? These are the key objectives and these are the metrics we want to use for them, right? So how do you figure out what are those things we want to measure? What are the business outcomes we want to measure? And then whatever metric you want to choose, maybe that's a double click. We can do in a future time. We can have some recommendations and we can
Absolutely
pick some studies. Yeah. So this was useful, I hope. And what I will request people to do when when I share this on LinkedIn, and probably if you're sharing it, is ask people to comment which of these approach they have used knowingly or unknowingly, or which of these approach do they which of these approach they think fits well to the current or some previous project.
Or if they have any questions or objections on this method, please let us know. We'll try to address them in future episodes.
Yeah, we don't get too many objections, which little worries. We get a lot of, we heard you, it was a good thing, but we hardly get a lot of objections. So.
Yeah, I think some contra view would be helpful to know what is not working, what working.
So see you around, Sachin. Bye-bye, everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Bye.